Okay, everybody, welcome. Um, this is the MCF Pre-Retiree Academy, and today we are kicking off our very first module of the year. It's titled "The New Reality of Retirement," and we've updated it since last year a little bit, and have some additions that we have taken. We've consolidated the course down from 10 weeks to 8 weeks. Seemed to make sense, put some content together where we could, but we're very excited to get going with this. This is our third year in doing it, and obviously we've had some really good feedback and engagement, and that's all because of you all taking the initiative to really kind of be involved in your own journey, if you will, and we're honored to kind of help usher you through that and help give you kind of a stronger foundation as you get closer to retirement. For those who don't know, my name is Hunter Nighbert. I'm a financial advisor and retirement planning specialist with MCF Advisors. MCF serves as your retirement plans fiduciary investment consultant, and we partner with your company's retirement plan committee and monitor the plan's investment offerings and ensure that the plan is compliant with retirement plan regulations. We also serve you all individually and as groups by providing investment guidance for you, the participants, via individual or group meetings, and all of that is done at no additional cost to you. And the reason we do that is we're here to really make your plan the most successful as possible. And what makes that successful in terms of an outcome for you guys? Well, that's simply where you're armed with information, education, and access to advice in order for you all to make the best decisions that you can in order for you guys to cross the finish line of retirement on time and successfully through it, I might add. As a reminder, we're an independent SEC registered investment advisory firm. We manage about $2.5 billion in assets under management. Dropped a little bit last year, obviously, because the gross contraction in the market, very unique last year, obviously. Each one of your plans has a dedicated service team, including retirement plan specialist. I, in general, am that person for most of the plans. However, we do have some other advisors that fill that role on certain plans as well. And we are located in Covington, Cincinnati area, Louisville, Kentucky, and Lexington. So thank you for paying attention and being involved in your own journey. So always get asked the question, particularly by plan sponsors, of why. Why would we come up with this supplemental educational course? This is really meant to be foundational, but retirement is different today than it has been with the previous generations. Retirees used to be able to, almost count solely on a pension, and also in some cases full health care benefits for them and their families in a relatively, subdued periods of inflation. And while there are still some employers that are offering pensions in the workplace, and some of you all have those, the predominant workplace savings vehicle now is a defined contribution plan, aka a 401k or 403bs that you all participate in. These are plans where employees save for themselves and may receive an employer match, but increasing life expectancy, while that is a blessing, also presents a challenge for you as participants with the prospect of your savings not lasting long enough to cover your life expectancy. We now live 10 years longer than what our parents did, and 20 years longer than our grandparents. And while the tail end of the baby boomers, and I would add the Generation Xers, have and are working longer, they continue to retire each day, and it's a riddle of combining retirement plan savings, Social Security, partial pensions to kind of fund your retirement. And this is honestly, you all are the first generations in order to have to navigate this on your own. because your parents and grandparents had those pensions in a different way to do it, there was no one to teach you, quite simply. And because of that, there really is, has not been a blueprint for you and people and Generation Xers as myself to follow, or to someone to teach them, because the process in the previous generations was just so different. So now the challenge, is to, how do you take a lifetime of savings and convert that into a stream of income, and, deal with all the challenges of living longer and rising healthcare costs and having to stretch those dollars farther than before. Meanwhile, this is our reality. But meanwhile, your 20-something kids and 30-something-year-old kids are climbing a corporate ladder, and they're saving 15% of their gross income, including an employer match, for their retirement. And they don't have to think about it. This is the contrast from where we have come from to where we're at now, by the way. But, when they're hired, they are automatically enrolled into a 401k plan. Their contributions are automatically put at a beginning level, and in many cases increased 1% or so a year until it hits kind of that goal. Not only is that the case, they don't have to worry about these kind of investments of doing things on their own, because they now have managed options that are based on their age, and they default into those. And if they just kind of stick with this, they will be able to replace kind of 80% of their pre-retirement income and hit that goal. So I guess at its core, the reason we decided to create this informational course is for participants really nearing retirement, because we really want to provide a stronger or better foundation for your personal retirement planning journey, and create awareness about questions that you may not have addressed or even know exist. Working in this space over my career, and becoming more heavily involved in retirement plans over the last 8 years, to be specific, when I interact with participants, it really struck me about how many people just don't really know what to do next. Something as simple as, how do I access my money? Like, how do I even get that? Like, do they send me a check? Is that direct deposit? How often can I do it? Let alone questions like, will my savings last long enough? Or when should I take Social Security? Or risk, how much risk to take? Or more importantly, by far, how much risk not to take? And so hopefully this will, help fill in the gap of some of that information, or at least create awareness. It's okay if you don't know the answer to these questions. I don't expect you all to be a complete expert on any of this stuff when we're done, but really for you to be aware of stuff that you've not thought of, that we have to take into account in order for you guys to kind of see that big picture a little bit more fully, and really more importantly, for you all to be successful in this. That's really it. That's really the genesis of how a couple of us put this together. So really quickly, we're going to cover various topics that we're going to, but these topics are going to be covered in a combination of delivery methods. We have live webinars like we're doing today. There will be a couple of recorded webinars, PDFs, and PowerPoints. There's some worksheets also that you'll be able to use both and save for yourself and for the future. And so you're going to get delivered all of these topics in one way or another through these various delivery methods. I've already had some great questions and things that people would like me to cover, which is awesome. Everybody, when they register, I've had some really interesting questions and good things to go in there. So I'm going to do my best to work some of those that have been asked into the content, or at least be prepared to cover them in the Q&A sections of those live webinars. Also encourage everyone to ask questions. Feel free to contact me if you feel stuck or get confused by any of this information along the way, or if there's something specifically that you have questions about. And some of that stuff when you answer as we go, if you ask me as we go, I might put it up and say, listen, I'll make sure to cover this during this module, or you're gonna, get this. People tend to get ahead of ourselves a little bit. And so it's designed to kind of go out over the 8 weeks. And then of course, there's going to be, as always, there's going to be further opportunities to have a one-on-one meeting with myself in the future to kind of discuss your personal situation, what you have on your mind, pain points that you might need addressed, and maybe other creative ways to think about something. And a lot of that just comes down to perspective. So if you look at the screen, obviously that, today, the new reality, but more specifically, gathering data, what the first steps that you want to take and are going to need to know for this, taking a stock of assets and liabilities. This is really keeping your net worth. It kind of goes with this top one here. Setting a budget. These are all the early things that we want to do. Understanding Social Security benefits. Always get some questions along the way on this. It's very difficult to cover everything that needs to be said. Social Security is about the size of the Gutenberg Bible now. And so sometimes specific questions to yours, if you have that, I can, copy some stuff that we have and resources that we have, send the answers to the questions directly to you, or just answer them straight away if they're simple. But Social Security is a deep, dark hole that sometimes you have to crawl in, unfortunately. Retirement withdrawals and really, different ways to draw down your money. There are methods in terms of being able to do that. That one's going to be a live one this year. And in the past, we've done short recordings on that. Very, very passionate about that subject in itself, because it's extremely important. Tax planning basics. I'm going to bring on a special guest again to talk about that. Evaluating your risk. Very important, and really important to know how much risk not to take. More importantly, obviously going to continue to talk about adding to your savings. We target people 55 and up. So some of you on here are right at that age and really going to have 10 more years and really back end and upload and backload that savings, if you will. Another really popular one, always one of the most clicked on, listened to, attended, is review or create an estate plan. We'll do an interview style live webinar with an estate attorney that does an amazing job of honestly giving examples of why you need to think about some of the things in terms of maybe differently than you have, or just important, why those things are important. And he's really good of illustrating the needs through examples. Life insurance needs, if you all still have any of those, we'll have a worksheet and a PDF on that. Medicare basics. We're going to talk about that. And it's, again, that's another deep one, but really give you the gist of what each part is and how that works. And then lastly, maintaining. This is basically you building a small or reasonable financial plan for yourself. And so we're going to talk about maintaining that financial plan, because this is not a one and done thing. This is an ongoing thing that has to be evaluated, and working with a financial advisor, maybe some things to consider about that. All the content that we just covered, all those modules, all the content that we had, recordings and everything will be placed on this website right here. You can go directly to it. This will be up for the remainder of the year, up until the beginning of next year. So you can always go back and resource this over time. Obviously it's a busy time of the year. There's no great time to kind of really make this perfect in terms of time of the year to deliver it. So we wanted a place for you to be able to go back and refer to some of the things that we're going to talk about on a regular basis. So not only are we going to cover the foundational topics that we just mentioned, but we're also going to address some additional risk and considerations when planning. In no uncertain order, we're going to cover these risks as it pertains to the topic at hand. Some of these are unknown and you might not know how it affects you. But some of them and many of them need to be planned for or be in the forefront of your mind, because they can have a significant impact on your retirement success. So, I mean, 5 key risks, obviously longevity, we're living longer. And so you have to account for that in various and sundry ways. We'll talk a little bit about that. Healthcare expenses. We're going to dive into a little bit of this today, about, why you need to make sure it's important from an expense side to not underfigure this one. Inflation. Man, this has been on the news for last 14 months or so. Inflation has reared its head in a pretty large way over the past, 16, 18 months. It's a risk. It's usually not as abundant as what we, this high concentration that we've had, but over time, it averages about 2.5% is what the Fed's target is. And so it does erode your spending power over time. So we're going to talk about this in relation to not only your expense side, but in particular, your asset allocation side. Asset allocation. This is risk, folks. This is not taking too much risk. Very important. Risk doesn't matter a whole lot when we're saving and have a long-term horizon, so we have years until we retire, but risk really starts to matter when we get close, and it really, really matters once we retire. So not taking too much risk. And then the last one, excess withdrawal. Taking out too much too soon is a risk that we all need to pay attention to. In the end, we're going to, really just aim to increase your overall retirement readiness, and that's your ability to kind of live the lifestyle that you desire. And some of the determining factors include Social Security, pension or retirement plan benefits, other potential incomes and healthcare costs, and then emotional readiness. I talk to people all the time that have a hard time once they retire with that. They underestimate that a little bit. So pretty important to kind of consider those things. One of the most popular questions that I get in this position of leadership for participants in plans is, how much money do I need to retire? How much money does it take? And I hear numbers thrown out, just numbers. Do I need 500,000? I've read 1 million more. Well, the real answer to this is everyone is different. And the real specific answer to this is the amount that you need to have saved is directly proportional to the amount you plan to spend, not only over your lifetime in retirement, but annually, because those two things are really related. But in general terms, most financial experts recommend saving enough to replace between 70 and 90% of your pre-retirement annual income in order to kind of maintain the lifestyle and the standard of living that you've become accustomed to. So you've heard us say this before on many different occasions, I'm sure, but we recommend 80% or higher as a target. The reason we always throw this out there, this is an easier one to kind of figure out. You all are getting closer to retirement. You know about what 80% of your income is. And if you use that as a need, then that's a starting point to kind of figure out in terms of spending, and then you work backwards from there, and you kind of can figure things out. And most of the record keepers that you guys are using have tools that are directly related to replacement income, I might add. While this is a simple rule to compute and understand, the real answer, it goes back to what I just said. It really depends on what you want to spend. Most often it comes down to 3 questions, everyone. And it's really in this order for me. How much money do I need to live the way I either want to live, or at least for my current lifestyle? How much money do I need? Question 1. And if you don't know that, we're going to talk about kind of figuring that out. When do I need it? When do I need to start drawing money from my savings or assets? And I want you to make sure that you understand that it's not necessarily, that answer is not always when you're drawing money from the savings, is not always when you retire. I know plenty of people that do not start taking from their retirement because they have outside savings that they might access first. So those two things are not always synonymous. They are for some of you. And then the last question is for how long? How long will I be drawing the money for in retirement? Well, if you all know the answer to that question, I would love for you to share it with me, because it's going to make this job a whole lot easier. But that is the one variable that none of us know. We don't know how long we're going to live in this life. And, your retirement goals should not only be, it should be through life expectancy. And so we have to account for that. And there's some easy ways to kind of do that. Let's dive deeper really quickly into where your sources of income may come from in retirement. And a secure retirement often depends on several different sources, like the one shown here. Social Security, obviously a big piece for everybody on the call, I think. Personal savings, that's outside savings. Your qualified retirement plan, pensions, IRAs, individual retirement accounts are good examples of some of those outside savings or different types of retirement plans. Income from assets. Many people on the call will have income from assets, if nothing else, dividends from their portfolio. And other people have rental real estate. I've talked to quite a few people in one-on-ones that have some rental real estate. You might get income from that. Some of you might get incomes from other types of earnings. Maybe you have a side job in retirement that's going to pay you much less. But all those things really matter when going into figure it out, especially early on. And then others might be blessed and have income from maybe a former parent's estate or those kind of things. So it's really important to encompass and understand where all of your sources are coming from, identify those sources, how much, and put them on a list and start adding them up of what that's going to look like for you. It's also important to know that Social Security by itself is not enough to reach this 80% recommendation. It's just not. It was never designed to be that way. It was always designed to be a safety net. So, as a safety net, you're going to be, have to lean heavily on all of these others in order to kind of make things work broadly for you. By the way, on the Social Security, if you don't know what your projected Social Security is going to be, SSA.gov, Social Security Administration.gov, you can create a login there with information that all of you already know, and you can go and refer to that. It'll tell you full retirement age at 62 and 70, and if you need help, say at an interim age figuring that, we'll be sure to help you with that and help you understand how that works when we get to the Social Security as well. As I mentioned before, because we're in new territory, it's very important to really kind of have a sense of the percentages of where your retirement income will come from. And if you take a look at this chart, which is really based on Social Security Administration's latest analysis, it shows that people with an income of about 72,000 or more can count on Social Security payments for just about 15% of their retirement income. Pensions, if you're lucky to have one, will account for 22% of that total. Although these are just averages. I know there are pensions that I'm aware of that some people on this call have that will account for more of that. There's some that we administer and help that account for more of that. But just as it's important to know as an average. And then if you look at your own sources, it takes up about 62% of where that income comes from, and the vast majority of those things come from things like your savings, your 401k savings, and those kind of things. Always, a tough question is, do I have enough? Well, it depends on your own personal stuff. You can ask yourself some of these questions. Am I in a position to stop working? Obviously, we've talked a lot about identifying your retirement expenses. Do you know what those are going to look like? Have you looked into your healthcare cost? Huge portion of it. Will I be able to maintain that lifestyle? And if I do, will my money last as long as I need it to? But all of these come down to some questions that I can't answer that you all will need to answer. And that really comes to how you want to live and what you want that to look like. So it all starts with budgeting, and we're going to a couple of slides on it. Really, in this case, let's start simple. If none of you all have tracked your inflows and outflows, that's really the first part of the project. If you don't know how much you're spending, then start tracking it. Track it for a 1 to 3 month period. I say 3 months because it tends to get in some more expenses that might not fall just in 1 month. And even though your current expenses are going to likely change in retirement, you're going to kind of need to know this information and create a budget before you can kind of create a budget for today, before you can create that retirement budget. Put it simply, you kind of need to know where you're at now in order to kind of know where you're going. For example, are you going to have a mortgage payment today that you might not have in retirement? Obviously, that's a good thing if that's the case. And it's also important to plan for those unexpected expenses in retirement. Account a certain percentage for home improvements or, car repair, those kind of things. Those are the ones that we tend not to think of on a regular basis. So just, put a running average on it if you can and add that to it. A budget, it's important to understand that a budget is a plan. Tracking is the first step of that, of knowing what your inflows and outflows are. But a budget is a spending plan for the future. And creating a budget, while it seems simple in principle, and it is, and this budget here is really for while you're still working, not necessarily just for retirement. But again, you have to kind of know where you're at now in order to create that budget for that. And I think everybody knows what it is, in general, but a lot of people don't budget because it makes them feel restricted. But we have to account for these things in order. Obviously, our needs take up a bigger percentage. So, myself, I use a 50, 25, 25 for our house's budget. Our needs are, obviously food. We have contractual obligations like our mortgage, utilities, healthcare expenses that will be ongoing. I put that in big because that's going to be ongoing in the future. Transportation, college for my children in this case, trying to do some saving for that. These two, since they're the same, I don't like putting savings on top. I usually flip savings here because you're just paying yourself in the future. But, personal savings accounts, retirement savings, any of those things are extremely important. And then obviously your wants, vacation, dining out, entertainment, and travel. Like I said, this is just an example of a current budget, but obviously in retirement, there's going to be some categories that are not going to continue like they did during your working years, i.e. the savings, right? Obviously, when you retire, you're not going to be saving a ton more unless you just have some additional income that you don't need, maybe from one of those side jobs, or maybe you're lucky enough to have investments and other stuff that outpace, what your need is. But in general, most people, that savings category goes down. However, it's usually other things that are added to it that really kind of take over that category, or at least add to it, from where it's been deleted. So obviously, it's going to be replaced in some sort of manner. The most obvious is healthcare. You're going to have to continue to do that as you get older. Healthcare costs tend to go up, and so it's very important to kind of make sure that the stuff that you're not paying now, that you account for that in terms of your retirement budget. So remember the 3 questions. The first one is, how much money do I need? And a budget is a huge first start, huge important part to kind of answering that question. As I mentioned before, some of those categories may swap out from your working years to retirement. And the biggest one, I think, without a doubt, that has the opportunity to greatly impact you in retirement is healthcare. I found this from a Fidelity study not long ago. And honestly, at first, it kind of blew my mind. But the average couple for 65 and older over life expectancy will spend $300,000 on out-of-pocket expenses. And if you break that down individually between men and women, and you give it, 65, women on average are living above 80, 81 almost, and men are like 79 and a half. So if you just look at that horizon, and I mean, it almost is $1,000 a month, and it might not start that way. But it's very important to get a grasp on what your needs are going to be and account for that, because it might require some additional savings, or maybe you want to work another year or so to shore up that difference just for those kind of things. Medicare Part B and D premiums account for that out of pocket as well. And I would also add, lastly, if you're going to retire before the age of 65, before Medicare kicks in, it's extremely important to understand the impact that this can have. You'll have to go to the private market unless some of you, I know some of you are blessed enough to have access to like a healthcare trust from your employer, but most of us aren't. And, on average on the years, let's say you retire at 63, I usually account in terms of financial planning about $1,000 a month for healthcare expenses for you to buy your own insurance. So about $12,000 a year. So over 2 years, it's $24,000 until 65. And then you still will have to pay something because you still have your supplements for Medicare that you will have to pay. So very important for you all to not overlook that. I know it's difficult. There are now a lot of tools that are available online to kind of help estimate with this. And these are newer. These have only come up in the last few years. And we'll try to share some of those with you as well. Inflation. Inflation is a long-term tendency of money to lose its purchasing power. In other words, your dollar becomes worth less. And in particularly, it can have a negative effect on retirees because it chips away our retirement income in two ways. It increases the future cost of the goods and services that you currently use. And it also erodes the value of the assets aside of those in some ways to meet those costs. This will come into play in several different sections during this course. In particularly asset allocation, very important. You can be too conservative, and we'll get to that later. But as this slide reveals, even relatively low inflation of 2% can have a significant impact on a retiree's purchasing power. For example, $50,000 of income today may only be worth $30,477 in 25 years based on a 2% inflation rate. It doesn't really affect you a whole lot really quickly, but it's kind of like a whole bunch of paper cuts over time. It really hurts, and if you bleed enough, you can bleed out from that. The strong likelihood of continuing inflation makes it imperative that your retirement savings includes investments with the potential to beat inflation, but also anticipating that your expenses will rise naturally as a result of that. So, and many people on the call probably understand, what the cost of a gallon of milk was in 1970 as a result. 1970, I think it was near about 65 cents. Today, that same gallon is around $4, $5. In some cases, it's come down a little bit over the last year, thank goodness. But just kind of that, in your mind's eye to understand that this is something that we have to pay attention to on several fronts when we're planning. There might be some additional expenses that you haven't thought of in retirement, and that's okay. But these expenses for things that you want to do, or things that might be unexpected: relocation, home improvements, renovations, hobbies, grandchildren, those kind of things. So just try to think as much outside the box as you can. Include the hobbies. We have to enjoy this thing. A very important piece of that, in my opinion. But next Tuesday, we're going to provide you with a budgeting worksheet that's going to help you get started and package and organize this. It's done very well. And I think it's going to really kind of help give you a good starting point of all the things to consider, and something that you can fill out and use for yourself ongoing for that. In week 3, maybe the end of week 2, you're going to be provided with a personal financial statement template. It's also known as a net worth statement. All this is your assets minus your liabilities. One reason it's nice to have this, because it helps you package all of your, different accounts: checking, savings, retirement accounts, outside savings, brokerage, real estate, those kind of things, stuff that has, worth to you, that's, liabilities as well, what debts you might have. And a net worth is simply your assets minus your liabilities. We put this in there for a couple of reasons. Number one, to help you identify all of those sources of income that you're going to have. But number two, I think it's really beneficial from a mindset shift to track your net worth as you're building a budget, and as you're implementing a budget, especially when you're trying to reach a goal. And the reason I say this is that budgeting itself makes you feel restricted. I think there's a certain point once you get past that it actually makes you feel empowered, because it puts you in full control of your situation. But if you track your net worth statement, you at least get some running satisfaction tracking that net worth statement with the budget. If there's a plan, which is the budget, you're either going to try to save more, or you're going to try to spend less, or pay down save more or pay down debt. Save more or pay down debt. Obviously, if you spend less, that money's going to go somewhere. But save more or pay down debt. It's really satisfying to see your net worth increase as a result of those, because then you know that the work that you're putting in, the commitment, the sacrifice of what you're doing, is paying off, because you could get to see it on that net worth statement. And I had a friend show me that about 3 years ago, and I really thought it was a great idea. It helps you see that progress closer to real time as you're keeping those things going. It's really reaffirming. Okay, so over the course of the next 8 weeks, this is the calendar of which content is going to be released. Obviously, today is the 15th. Next week, you're going to set your retirement budget, take stock of assets and liabilities. That's the net worth statement that we talked about. We're going to have another live webinar on the 28th on withdrawal strategies. On the 30th, evaluate your risk profile. You'll get some PDFs and PowerPoints, I believe, on that. Understanding Social Security benefits on the 5th. The 11th, keep adding to that retirement savings. Very important. Don't stop. Keep doing it all the way till you retire. It really does matter. Tax strategies in retirement. We're going to talk some very basics, and along with some things for you to have a better understanding of not only how things are taxed, but ways that you can become a little bit more efficient and hopefully pay less taxes in retirement by doing some of that planning. Evaluating your life insurance needs and some long-term care. Maybe you're in need of that, maybe you're not, but kind of give you a better idea. Some of you already own it, I understand. And then review your state or get or estate plan or get one. Switching to Medicare, registering for Medicare, very important. Then we have our retirement guide that we put out. This is really going to be awesome. This is new from last year. I think it's going to be really good, and you're going to really like it. It's a kind of some a printed set of action steps that you all can continue to take when we're done. And then we'll wrap it up on May 2nd as well. If you have specific questions, please forward those to me as you wish. Don't be shy. If you have a question, someone else is likely thinking the same thing, I promise. Again, at some point in time in the future, we're all going to have an opportunity to do one-on-one Zoom calls. I'm here to help you. So these are all the different ways that you can get a hold of me. Obviously, you can email me here. You can schedule, here. You can schedule a calendar appointment by putting this into your URL. You can scan this QR code that will take you directly to my calendar to set up an appointment if you have something you're really bothering you and you need some help with. And then also all the content will be placed right on here. But if something's bothering you, if you have worries, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help. I want you to achieve your goals. I want to, kind of help you and encourage you to stay focused on your objective, regardless of where we're at in these market cycles. And it's up and down. There's a lot going on, but that's, sometimes the way that works. But it'll be a reassuring, sometimes just to share and talk through some of these things with myself. So I encourage you to kind of give me a call. And maybe even if that's the case, we'll be able to work together on more of a long-term plan for yourself as well. So any other questions that we have? That's all I have for today. I told you I would keep it near an hour. I know there's been a few questions. So I'm looking, let's see. Should you count Social? So we have one question. Good question too, by the way. Should you count Social Security as an asset when calculating your net worth? No, it's not necessarily an asset, but what it is, you should count it towards your income. So that way, let's say your Social Security is going to be $20,000 a year, but your income need is 40. Well, then 20% of that's made from your Social Security, or 20,000 of that's made through your Social Security. Then we have to figure out, okay, we're going to take 20,000 from somewhere else. How does that impact? How does that impact you on that, if that makes sense? What website if I would like to find more information? Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Information on the course, obviously we put that on there. But you can view, Emily answered, she put that on there as well. Thank you, Emily, appreciate that. Let's see, no other ones. Any other quick questions that we have? We got plenty of time. I know that's a lot in a very short amount of time. And sometimes these things are very easy. I will try my best. Most of the webinars that we do, except the state when that tends to go the full time, and it honestly, because of questions, that one will go, the wrap up will keep under an hour, and the other live one, I'm intending to be about 30 minutes. I'm trying to keep this very, not only high level, but very, good in terms of using your time as well. I turned 65 in November this year, but plan on working another 2 years until March 2025. Should I go ahead and get a hold of Medicare now and apply? Yes. Now, that doesn't mean you have to take it. But and you'll see when we get to the Medicare portion. Good question, Carol. Very important that you apply at age 65 for Medicare. There are some you can be penalized, in fact, for not applying for it. So very important to do that at the minimum. I will say this, they have it now set up to where if you take Social Security about that or before the age of 65, it will automatically enroll you for Medicare that will come available for you at 65, from my understanding. We'll double check on that. So anyways, yes. Rebecca. Oh, no, you're next. Sorry. Kevin asked, Will we send a new link for the next meetings, or you need to re-register? Nope, there will be links for the webinars that are already registered. You'll get reminders. You'll get a sign-up link probably about 10 days before, and reminder that will come in the day before, I believe, in order for you to register for that. I'm glad you asked that question, because I would, my team would have made me answer that, but I would have forgot. Thank you. Rebecca, term insurance, should you renew it or get a different plan? Great question. And we probably on the sheet for insurance, it'll cover this a little bit, but probably not enough. That will probably be a question that I'll follow up with you, or if you email me, I might get a little bit extra information on. The issue with term is that it becomes very expensive at some point in time. Now, what you can do is there are types of terms that you can get in order for that payment not to jump as much, because term only covers a certain portion. But the more important question is, what are you keeping the insurance for? And that there's really two reasons to have insurance, Rebecca, and that's to help create an estate, which is replace your income so you can pay off things like mortgages or those kind of things, to pay debt, replace your income. Those are ways of creating an estate. Or another one, in simplest terms, to help pay for one, but that usually doesn't come in. What I mean by that, if someone was going to be subject to estate tax, life insurance is very nice because it adds to that. It shores up and can help you pay the tax for estate purposes. But that level is so high right now, it almost doesn't affect most people. I'm more of a term person. So I'm more of a term person in general. However, it all depends on your personal situation and what your discretionary income is. So you and I can talk a little bit more about that specifically. Annette says, I cannot download anything on the website. It only wants me to register. Annette, so the way this works is that each of those, we try to put things out only as they come out on the calendar. That way people aren't getting too far ahead. I know there's subjects that some of you will want more to pay attention to more than others, and that's natural. But I don't want you to get too far ahead, because sometimes then we get questions, and some of some of the content will answer the questions in itself, and all of it probably won't, right? It depends on how detailed the question is. So as those things come out, the thumbnails, you'll see it appear on there. So the new reality will be added to the website tomorrow, maybe Friday at the latest. We will email the recordings out to everybody as well. So it won't be available to you up front, but as they are delivered and those dates that we talked about, they will become available to you on that. One question, what was the age you said that we should file for Social Security? Well, I didn't say an age that you should. And really, for me, that's more of a math problem, and some of that comes into life expectancy. I would say this, if you're going to continue to work until age 65, at least, or even to 67, then there's little reason to take Social Security beforehand, because at least up until full retirement age, even if you get it then, they're not going to give you all the money if you make over like $35,000 or $40,000, I believe it is, and they won't give it to you all at once anyways. So they really withhold portions of that until then. Now, once you reach 67, that threshold changes greatly, and maybe you want to take it then. But it all depends on a couple of different things. I have a lot of people that I counsel and talk with in one-on-one meetings that say retire at age 63, 64, and they wait an additional at least 2 years in a lot of cases, sometimes to full retirement age, before they take it. What you have to understand is that Social Security that full retirement age is 67. It might be a little bit earlier for some of the people on the call, but 67 is full retirement age for most of the people these days. And anytime you take it, earlier, it's at a discount. And that discount usually is on average of 8% a year. It's a little bit more than that actually, but 8% is the easy math. So if you were to take it at say 64 versus 67, well, that's 24% difference. That's pretty significant. But there are reasons for some people to do that. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to Social Security, and you'll see some strategies for being able to take those things. Will the sessions be held the same time and day? That's a great question. We try to stagger the times a little bit, and I think I'm not sure if we've nailed down the times. Emily, will you look and see what times the next live sessions are scheduled for? We try to stagger those. Sometimes we'll put them at the end of the day and a lot of times at the lunch hour, but it's very difficult, to kind of capture everybody all the time. And there's really no way for us to hit the nail on that. But I do think we've staggered them in the past, and I think that was the plan to do some different. But I would say the vast majority of them will be held around this hour. I'll be 65 in a month. I consulted with 2 different Medicare specialists. I was told I could defer since I'm still working and my employer benefits are equal or better than Medicare. Yeah, I would listen to those consultants then. There's a difference in registering for it and I think taking it. I think you can register for it at 65, but not take the benefit yet. And I think that's really what they're talking about as well. Yes, and you can't, for the supplements, you can definitely wait on that. You don't have to register for supplements until you retire, for sure. Absolutely. How far in advance should one start the Social Security or Medicare process to get it? It depends on your method of how you're going to register for Social Security, to be specific. Let's talk about that one first. In general, if you go down to the Social Security office and file for it that way, besides taking a lot of time, at least at our local one, I hear it's takes you a while to kind of get in to talk to somebody. But generally, you'll want to register for it 3 months before, is 3 to 4 months. Online is very easy, and I hear that it comes much quicker. But the rule of thumb has always been about 3 months. So register if you're going to take it at full retirement age, and you would do it 3 months prior to your 67th birthday if you're going to take full retirement. Yeah, and Eric says online is very easy and effective. And Eric knows this stuff, I promise you. So there was a question in the Q&A. Thank you, Emily. I'm 61. Is it better to save my personal account or add more to my 401k? Do you mind typing in really quickly how much longer you're planning to retire or planning to work, I should say? If you could do that, that'd be really great. If you're going to go 4 more years, then I think you should go in your 401k, particularly so you can, maximize your match that you would get in it. If you're going to retire, sometime later this year, then it is kind of a toss-up. However, I always tell people to keep saving in the 401k in most cases, because your dollar cost averaging, stock market and bond market for that matter, got beat up pretty good last year. That'll improve moving forward. So I would keep putting it in while things are lower. And if you need access to it, you're going to be able to get it, because you're of age, to be able to do those. So, let's see, you mentioned $1,000 average for an individual and planning for medical. What do you consider average family plan? And are prescriptions handled differently? Really, that's a single plan that I was referring to for a single person. That includes kind of getting, enough coverage to get your prescription medicine handled the way it was. family, it won't be like $1,000 per person, because when you insure people under a family and during that time, you get the benefit of those people being younger, so their premiums tend to blend and not be quite as much. But I mean, I would guess it would be, $1,000 for the adults and 500 for kids, depending on the age. That's what a friend of mine in that business told me, at least. It's, again, Darren, that is one of the most difficult things to try to figure. Sure. Okay, so no more than 4, then I would definitely, in terms of continuing to work, I would say continue to put in that 401k for sure. Get the pre-tax benefit of it now. Your dollar cost averaging into investments that are lower. When you buy them, when they're lower, you're buying more of them. When you buy more of them and they go up, then that tends to create more is more. Okay, we're right on the hour right now. Let's have any other questions? Any other questions? No rush, but any other questions? Those are good questions. A really good start, everyone. That's awesome. You're very welcome. Several people saying thank you, and trust me, I really appreciate you all. The fun for me is obviously I enjoy doing this. But the real fun for me is when I get to talk to you guys one-on-one, and we get to kind of figure these things out together. It's hard. There's no right or wrong way to do this. MCF, and we recommend 80%, but I know people that are plenty good with 70% replacement income, and they're living exactly the way they want to, and they're happy and those kind of things. So don't get bogged down into the minutia of it all. It's really important just to kind of, be aware of where you're at and what you want to do. Somewhat happy with my 401k savings, thinking about putting more in an HSA. I think if you have discretion, and that's a great question, Alan. I think if you have the discretionary income to do it, and if your savings is in good shape and you're on track for that, then I think it is a awesome plan to fund that HSA prior to retirement. Remember, the HSA, guys, it will stay together in perpetuity until you use it. So the fact, if you put it in today, it's got an investment component to it. You're buying in cheaper cost now, when it goes up, it's going to continue to grow for you. And it's something you're going to be able to use for, hopefully many years to come. And that really will help take the pressure off some of that rising healthcare costs, particularly from the out of pocket, because you can use that for every dollar of that if you want to. So yes, Alan, I think that is a awesome idea for you to continue and fund that over and above what you can. Yeah, very smart. I'm glad you asked that question. It's a really good one. Anything else? Had a few people drop off, but that's okay. We still have plenty of attendees. Once again, thank you all for attending, for listening. Just hang in there. If you get overwhelmed, just slow your pace and know that you can always go back and look at these things and Pat, this is somewhat akin of drinking from a fire hose in some ways. So it can be a lot. But until then, I look forward to talking to all of you all in the future to kind of give you some more information. We'll get into the weeds on some of the things. That's really where I really love, I like getting in the weeds. It's fun. One more question here. So if I contribute to, I think you meant HSA, once I leave my employer, I will be able to take it with me. Absolutely. Yep. Savings accounts are not like flex spending accounts. Flex spending accounts, that are used for various and sundry things. Most common for young people, we used it, was a flex spending account we used for daycare, so we could pay our daycare out of it. It was a tax deductible way to put money in there and deduct your daycare anyways. And so we would do that. But you had to spend it all in that year. Flex spending has to be zeroed out at the end of the year, and HSA does not. So the more you put in, the more you carry over, the more it goes on to the future, the better it is for you, for sure. I'm being charged $5 a month for HSA. Well, that's not terrible. Any way to avoid the fee? Not to avoid the fee completely, because there's administration that goes into that. And obviously, you know, most of those times you get a bank card and you got to pay the people that own the accounts and those kind of things. So it's hard to avoid the fee, but there is ways to maybe mitigate that through some of your selection of what of what you can get it to grow with, maybe. $5 a month is, it seems a lot, depends on how much you have in there, obviously, but that's not crazy. Anything else? Well, we're looking forward to it. If that's all that we have, I'm going to stop this recording, and